Hey, what's going on, Cloud Scholars? I hope your day is going well. My name is Kieran Tross, and I am your host for today's video. Welcome back to all those Cloud Scholars who are part of my page. And if you are new to the page, please smash that like and subscribe button. A lot of content here to show you within the Azure space. So in today's how-to video, I am going to go through setting up a point-to-site VPN. So as always, I like to define things before we even get started. Okay, according to Microsoft's definition, a point-to-site VPN gateway connection lets you create a secure connection to your virtual network from an individual client computer. A point-to-site connection is established by starting it from the client computer. So basically, a point-to-site connection is one of the methods that you can use if you don't have a large user setup. So let's just say if you're a startup company, you've got like 30 employees, you would set up a point-to-site connection. You can do it that way, or you can have it for big organizations as well. But it's really just to kind of get that person, that client on the machine, and I'm going to show you exactly how we go about doing that. So point-to-site VPNs can use one of the following protocols. So one is an open VPN. The second one is a secure socket tunneling protocol. And then the last one is the IKE version 2 VPN protocol. For this demonstration, I'm going to go through setting up an open VPN using a point-to-site VPN. So let's talk a little bit about authentication methods. So one authentication method that you can use is a certificate-based self-signed or from an enterprise certificate authority. Certificate-based authentication methods is that you have to have that certificate on the machine, and it's got to be a valid certificate on the user's end, so that this way they can now make that connection and say, okay, you are good to go to get into the system. A radius authentication method integrates with Windows Active Directory. I will not be going over that within this video or certificate-based in this video. What I will be going through is the Azure Active Directory so Azure Active Directory method, where we're going to set up a VPN group, and then within that group, we're going to throw our users in who will have access to our VPN, who have the privileges. And with the Azure Active Directory, we're also going to do a mixture. We're going to do one with multi-factor authentication as well. So let's talk a little bit about the steps to complete this setup. The first one is we're going to create a gateway within our virtual network. Then the second thing we need to do is give admin consent. So we need to give admin consent to the Azure VPN, so that this way that it can read users within our organization, and we can say, okay, these people have access to this enterprise application. Third is going to be setting up the point-to-site configurations. Fourth, this is going to be to set up the MFA for our VPN group. And then finally, like any good admin architecture, or I should say cloud scholar, will do is test it out. So let's jump over to the Azure portal and let's get started. All right, so we're back at the Azure portal. And in your portal, you should be going to your virtual networks, and then your virtual networks, you need to choose the virtual network that you want to test this out with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this RG East US virtual network. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to subnets. And within subnets, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Gateway Subnet. And what I want to do is create this gateway subnet, because this gateway subnet is going to work with our Azure VPN. So whatever address space it comes up with, if you want to modify it, you can. I'm going to leave it the way it is. I'm not going to do anything with NAT gateway or any of these other settings. You can leave them the same way they are. And just click Save. All right, that gateway subnet is completed successfully. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to come over to Virtual Network Gateways. And within Virtual Network, we're going to create a virtual network gateway. So within our virtual network gateway, you can call it what you want. I'm just going to call it Gateway 1. And it has to be in the same region as the gateway that we created earlier. So I'm going to say East US, and it's going to be the type. Gateway type is going to be VPN. Then the VPN type is going to be route-based. And we're going to drop this to the VPN Gateway 1. We're not trying to spend too much money. And then when it comes to generation, you can leave it as generation 1. Virtual network, we're going to go RG East US virtual network. And then you can see it's going to load. It's going to already populate because it says, hey, you have a gateway there that you set up, but it's not associated with anything. So here we are. It grabs it. And then public IP address type, we're going to leave that as standard. Public IP address name. Over here, you need to put in a name here. So what I'm going to do is I will call the name Scholars Pub IP 1. And then I'm going to click review and create. And then I'll click create. So when creating the gateway, it does take a bit of time. This is probably going to take another 40 minutes to get completed. So once that is completed, I'll come back to the video and we can take it from there. All right, so now our virtual network gateway has been completed. The next thing we need to do is we need to now give admin consent to our environment. So over here, if we go to this link, and I'm going to put this in the description, it talks about authorized Azure VPN applications. And it's assigned to Azure portal as a user that has a global admin rights. And what you want to do is you want to take this URL here, you want to copy it, and then what you need to do is sign in with that specific username and password that has admin rights, and then give consent to your organization. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll return to the video. Okay, so once you go ahead and you sign in with your global administrator account, you should get this page, which you're seeing, which is on my screen, which says permission requested review for your organization, Azure VPN. This app would like to sign in and read user profiles and read all user basic profiles. What you're going to do is click accept and let it do its magic. So once we have accepted, I want you to go over to enterprise applications, and you're going to go right back into your environment, and you're just going to go to right down here to enterprise application. You'll click on all applications, and what you'll see is Azure VPN will now be an application within your environment. All right, Cloud Scholars, now we're going to get back over to your virtual network gateways. We need to click on Gateway 1, which whatever you named yours, you will click on it, and then you're going to go to point to site configurations, and we need to set this up. So let's go to configure. So here is the address pool. And one thing I want to tell you is in this step, we want to make sure that we don't cause any address pool conflicts. It's imperative to look at your current IP scheme layout when inputting an address space. When designing a network, what I like to do is associate IP schemes based on specific categories, such as like a region, department, location, etc. So my internal users may have an IP scheme of like 1010 subnet, right? And my VPN users will start with like a address like 172, so on and so forth. This helps me out, so when I'm diagnosing a network issue or there is a threat to my environment, I can get to the root of the issue much quicker, because just by looking at the logs, I can say, okay, this is a VPN user, and take my troubleshooting from there. So that's just a friendly suggestion so that you can, help you out with designing your environment. So this is the address pool that I came up with. You could choose your own, or you could just use the same one. It doesn't really matter. It's totally up to you. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do Open VPN. For authentication type, we're going to go to Azure Active Directory. And over here, what we need to do is put in some information like our tenant information. So I'm going to go ahead and get that information right now. All right, so Cloud Scholars, I want you to know. So in this Azure Active Directory, what you'll see is this information. The information you're going to pull from here, if we go back to the portal, it just gives you what info you need to put in there. So see how it has a HTTPS login at Microsoft.com, Azure AD tenant ID, and you can get that from your Active Directory, and I'll show you exactly where you're going to get that information. And then over here, it gives you the issuer. You're going to do the same thing followed by your tenant ID. And the way you set your information up is if it's Azure Public AD, which you're going to be using, you have the login credentials right here. I should say the URL credentials here, followed by your tenant ID. And then your audience is always going to be the same. So that's what's right here. You don't have to worry about anything else. If you're government, then you'll be doing that. Whatever is applicable to you. And then the issuer is what you're going to find here. So I'm going to have this information in the description. And for your tenant, you just want to come down to your tenant ID, and you could get it here within your organization. And you can get your tenant ID. So there. So back over here, we're just going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to click on save. So one of the things that we need to do is, if you notice up here, before we click save, this was all vagued out. Once this is saved and the information is in there, you're going to see this download VPN client. Now, one thing I want to point out to you as well, before I forget, is that you need to make sure you have this slash here at the end. This slash must be over here so that this way you can utilize it the correct way. Okay, so now that that's completed, what we need to do is we're going to download the VPN client. So go ahead and download that VPN client. It's going to have all your credentials in there, or what you need to submit. The next thing we need to do is you're going to need to download the Azure VPN. So you can do it in two ways. You can download the Azure VPN from just Googling it. So Azure VPN download. And right here, and I'll give this in the description as well, that you can download this VPN client. Or if you have a Mac like me, you just go to the App Store and then you download it from there. All right, Cloud Scholars, I did make a mistake earlier in the video. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I do not like to edit out the mistakes and make it seem like everything is perfect world. I don't think that people really work and learn that way. I like to show you exactly what error messages that comes up, because when you're doing these setups, sometimes you may run into error message, and it's one of the best things that you can do, right? When you're able to read the error message and get an understanding of exactly what the error message is stating, you're able to troubleshoot, and then overall you become better at your job. So when I was doing the setup earlier, I was kind of going through it, and we all make mistakes. So here I have my Azure Active Directory tenant, and I have this log on the Microsoft log, that microsoftonline.com, but I put this twice. So the issuer needs to have sts.windows.net. So in the Microsoft documentation, that's exactly what it says. It has the sts.windows.net. So let me go over to the documentation so I can show you exactly what I'm referring to. So we come back over to the Microsoft documentation right here where it says issuer. You need to have this https sts.windows.net followed by your tenant ID. So please make sure that you correct that on your end so that this way it shows that information. And then I want to go over to just an error message so you can see what you'd probably get, what you will get if you have it in the wrong way. So you see here, it will say fail to connect to server, connection dropped, session state initial. So that's the error message that I was getting. After a while, I was like, oh, okay, I noticed that I was making a mistake. But I do want to show you another thing that will cause a problem. And this is actually within the Microsoft documentation, and I did this part the correct way the first time. So back over at the Microsoft documentation, if you look to configure the Azure VPN client, Azure AD Authentication Windows, I'm going to drop the link to this as well. If it will tell you to download the Azure VPN client, it will say generate VPN client configuration, and that's within the portal where you're getting that configuration, and you'll have to download that. And once you install the Azure VPN client like we did earlier, you're going to import it. What happens is when you do the import, what they tell you to do is this digicert global root CA. Now, I went on two different Macs and I ran into an error message doing that, but then I went into Windows, and Windows auto-populated G2, right? So it was digicert global root G2 with Windows. So I went ahead and tried it out, and it actually worked. And then I went back over to my Mac, and I was able to get it to go through. So just a little bit of troubleshooting, but I wanted to point that out for you as well. All right, Cloud Scholars, this is exactly what I was referring to where I was talking about the certificate information. Right here, it says digicert global root G2. I had to put that in for mine in order for my gateway to properly work successfully. Now, if the DigiCert Global Root CA works for you, like the Microsoft documentation, please put something in the comments. Let me know that it worked for you. I'm just very interested to know that that certification did work. Now, in order to get to this point, because your screen is probably bare, you want to go to import. Once you go to import, what you'll see, it will populate with this little window here asking you for a file to import. You just drill down to wherever you downloaded that VPN client, where you saved it to on your local machine. Just make sure that you extract that folder. Once you extract that folder, you're going to look for the .xml file, and you're going to click open. And then what happens is it's going to populate with all this information. If you're on a Mac, you're going to have to hit this down arrow and go to digicert global root G2. If you're on Windows, it should automatically populate for you. Now, once you're here, what you need to do is click on connect. Now, once you're here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna sign in with your account, and make sure that you're connected to the VPN tunnel. Okay, so I was able to sign in successfully. You can see the Azure is connected. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna head over to the portal and take a look and see what the sign-in logs look like on that side. And in the portal, you'll see that we have our generate VPN profile package. If we go into our activity logs, we can see that we are actually having some activity on our VPN tunnel. So what the next thing that we need to do is we need to say, okay, we have our Azure VPN working, but we want to restrict access to our VPN. We only want certain people to have access to it. So what I'm going to do is over at Enterprise Applications, I'm going to click on Azure VPN. And I got to go to properties. And the first thing we want to do is assignment required. Right here, this says if this option is set to yes, the users and other apps or services must first be assigned to this application before being able to access it. So now I'm saying, hey, if you're not a part of this, you're not going to be, it's everything that who has access to the VPN, we're going to set it up so that this way you have to be a part of a specific group. So I'm going to come over here next to users and groups. And what I'll do is I am going to say add user and group. There's none selected. And I'm going to look for my VPN group. Now, in your organization, you may call it something different. It's totally up to you. You might say only finance users. It's really up to you, but you want to define a group that has access to this. So once I do that and I click assign, now my VPN users have access to the VPN. So I'm going to take this one out and I'm going to remove, and I'm just going to take that out. So here we are. Now VPN users are the only ones who have access to do it. And let me make sure that I have my cloud admin in there, and then we can take it from there. Okay, so I'm good with that. Cloud admin is in there. So the next thing I need to do is go back to my VPN. But what I want to do is say, hey, I want to have a conditional access for my VPN. So if you wanted to go about doing that, I would come down here to conditional access, and I would say a new policy, and I can call it VPN users. And then what I can do is I can select and I can do the same group that is for VPN. And as you can see here where it says Cloud Apps or Actions, it already has Azure VPN there because we already set it up from the portal. So we'll say, okay, Azure VPN conditions. We don't really need to have to worry about conditions. And we'll say grant. And we'll say, okay, grant require multi-factor authentication. And then we'll click select. And then what we'll do is we'll turn it on. And then we'll click on create. Great, so that's working, that's already there. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to my VPN, I'm gonna disconnect and reconnect to it and make sure it's working. All right, Cloud Scholars, so what I'm gonna do is right back over at the Azure VPN client, what I'll do is I'm gonna go over here where it says to configure. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clear saved account. So what I wanna do is I wanna log back in now that we have our MFA set up, right, with conditional access. But what I wanna do is I want to set this up so that this way I can test it out for one of the users in our VPN group. If you remember, there was a test user account in that VPN group. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sign in with that test user account. So let me put my credentials in. Now I've got to enter the code, which is good because it's saying, hey, you're authenticating. All right, and once I enter that code, I am now in. So you can see the Azure is connected. I'm going to run back over to the portal and see exactly what's populating. All right, so where I'm at right now is on the test user, and I went to sign in logs, and I can see right here, if you notice, it says test user, and it says application Azure VPN. So it seems that it worked, right? Not seems, it definitely worked. You see it says success. If I were to click on it, and I were to go to conditional access, I can see that VPN users, that new CA that we created, that new conditional access that we created, it says success. And you can see the other ones that are in my organization not applied because the test user isn't a part of that. So there we have it. We were able to set up our gateway. We were able to we were able to configure our gateway, sign into our gateway, give admin consent as well. Plus, we were able to set up and restrict access to our enterprise application, which is the Azure VPN, and restrict it to a group of users, and that users are in the VPN underscore group. And then even after that, we were able to also say, okay, let's do a conditional access policy where we have MFA tied to it as well. So we covered a lot in this video. You may have to watch it a second or third time just so that you really digest all the information. I hope that you found the content to be valuable here at Cloud Scholars. If you haven't done it already, please smash that like and subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. It took a lot of time to go through this and then also show you some of the errors that sometimes populate on your end and stuff that will definitely show up throughout your career. Just kind of helping you with the troubleshooting. That's really what my mindset is hey, I don't want to show you how to do it. I also want to, give you examples and give you error messages as well. So this way that you are better at your job and you feel better and more confident when you're going on an interview to talk amongst your peers. So once again, as always, here at Cloud Scholars, my goal is to get you from scholar to consultant and then from consultant to expert. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.